Here we go.
Illustrations by me.
So I hope everyone is having a wonderful new year. Okay, so I have mentioned this in a previous video that I wanted to come back and start doing these Twisted Sense tales. What I'm doing here is rolling the first three. I'm taking them off the list, off the channel from the early part, putting them later on, and I'm going to do all three of them, plus I'm going to do what I call an after party afterwards. And so what I'm going to do is you're going to see the first video, how it would be, and then you will see within a small short introduction, and then you will see the after party of that kind of flows right into, originally it was going to be a separate video. I was going to do 2 videos if I made it a separate channel. I'm going to keep it on this channel and just make it a part of the podcast section of the channel. Now, what you're going to see is I'm going to then come up with some kind of idea and try and tell you where I thought that story came from. Now, I want to say I have maybe not answered this correctly in the past, especially Becky asked me, a couple other ones have asked me, a couple other of you have asked me, hey, is this completely not scripted, whatever. In the future, so what happened was the first one was written down completely. The second one and third one was only written down, it was less and less. So the stories themselves are completely, I wrote them right before I recorded it, just so I had something to read. You can tell, especially in the first one, you'll hear me, some of them you do, because I go back to it a little bit. So what I did is the first one I wrote out completely, then I read it. The second one I didn't. The second one I wrote out some of the things I wanted to mention, a little bit more than bullet points though, just some of what I want to mention, and then I filled in the blanks off the cuff. The third one was more off the cuff, but it sounds more scripted. I don't know how that happened, but it wasn't. The third one was just bullet points, and I was trying to make up the story as I go. The reason that I have to do that for myself is because I will get into the story and go off the rails, go somewhere very distant compared to where the story has to go. But at some point, I have to loop back around to hit the story again. So I'm reading, and I'm not reading, I'm just hitting some bullet points, and I'm just going off in this weird story, and I'm like, oh wait, where am I supposed to be? I look at the bullet point and say, oh, okay, I got to come back around to this, and then I try and weave the story back around to it. It's a very interesting process. It's very fun for me. I hope you enjoy it. But these are the first 3 with the after parties. I'm going to just put them all in one video. The next ones, I have some videos recorded where I have the drawings, the paintings, all of that is done, but the story is not recorded yet. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You're going to get to see all 3 of them. You will see them with the explanations at the end. I hope the explanations add something to them. In the future ones, you're going to see just the small little couple second intro with the video and then the after party at the end, and that'll be the full episode. And I'm going to put that at the end of every video just because I think it's interesting where people come up with things. And I think it's interesting for me. It's kind of documenting my own stuff here. And I'm saying, what is actually happening here? Where am I getting these stories, or where are these ideas coming from? And maybe I can talk myself into it a little bit more. Now that I actually take time and first I review the video and I try and figure out where did that come from, and I really search my brain to see it had to come from somewhere. It's not just random thoughts. Even random thoughts aren't really random thoughts. There's thoughts you have because of other things you've experienced. It's just how it is. So I think I did a pretty good job here, but I want to hear from you. Let me know if you enjoyed the after party section of these, if that's something that you enjoy at all. I do, because I like to look back at it and say, oh, this is what I was thinking. Yes, that's right. That's exactly what I was thinking. But I want to hear from you anyway. Okay, we'll get into this, and hopefully when these progress, the newer ones that are going to come out, they're not scripted at all. Again, I'm going to have to put 1 or 2 bullet points just to loop around the story. But that's it. It'll be more like the third one, even though the drawing won't necessarily, but the story will be. All right, I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. Are you alone? Are you afraid of being alone? Are you afraid of being lost and alone? That's a very common fear that a lot of people have. Do you have it? Let's explore that. So, I try not to use clickbait titles for my videos, and one way I do that is by first getting to the point of the video and at least explaining what you will be watching as quickly as possible. Then I quickly get lost into a rant, a ramble, or fall completely down the rabbit hole, and I try to take you with me, sometimes kicking and screaming. No, I don't want to do that. I just enjoy your company, and I like talking to you, because you give me your undivided attention, and more often than not, you give me great life advice. And I always come out on top, which is more than I can say for the daily advice I get from many other people. And I appreciate that. As I go further and further into my thoughts, it's very easy for me to get lost, and I like you there with me because after all, who wants to be lost alone? Can we find our way around, or will we stumble upon every idea and whim that I spew out in an unorganized stew of information versus entertainment? So I try to get better at storytelling and thought mapping in such a way that you become lost in the tale and have a hard time finding your way out. See, if I can do that, then you might stay around a while longer. I like when we spend more time together. The twisted sense of things is like trying to leave a casino or a Walmart or a carnival at night. You get so turned around, and everywhere you look there are unsightly characters that keep distracting you from finding the exit until they decide they want to close. By then, you've given up all hope, and you just let them escort you out quietly and hope that by morning you have forgotten the whole experience. As they pull you from the grasp of imagination, your eyes feel heavy. Your feet drag, kicking up little sticks and paper cups along the dusty path. Your heart beats a little harder the closer you get to the exit. But in your mind, you aren't sure whether you're headed in or whether you're headed out. You remember the time you gained the strength to overcome your fears and desires to flee, but that moment is gone, and you are only aware of your immediate surroundings. You catch the drool just before it leaves your lips, and splash some water on your face as you rub your bloodshot eyes and try to focus on your surroundings. Things are dark, but a bit of moonlight shines on the ground next to a tree beside the old shed. You've never been in there, but somehow you have fond memories of the contents inside. Was it you or someone else whose memories you have hidden away from prying eyes inside an old pail that sits under the tree? You listen to the dewdrops fall into it one by one, almost causing enough anxiousness to widen your eyes, but that isn't really possible at this point. They feel heavier and heavier, but you pay no attention as you listen to the soft sound of the breeze blowing through the dying leaves on a crisp autumn night. It's so peaceful, and it's so calming that you almost stumble as you realize you're out of the place you had tried desperately to leave but could not find your way. You begin to smile as you realize maybe you were never really anywhere, but here, next to the pail that is under the tree, that is next to the old shed. You can't be alone, because I've been here with you the whole time. You've been keeping me company while I was lost. But don't worry. After a good night's sleep, you will feel rested and rejuvenated, and have that sweet smell of morning dew just out of reach as you climb up out of your cocoon and face the day with a new sense of vigor and confidence that you survived the twisted sense of this tale. With victory by your side, you will wonder no more, and have all the answers that you have waited for. Ah, wasn't that fun? I had fun too. Let's do this again sometime. Welcome to the after party for episode 1. Now, this first one I made years ago, and I really didn't have anything to say. I created this piece of art that was just scribble art. I thought it looked a little dark, and I didn't have anything to say about it. So what I did was I heard about writers that did this stream of thought, and they just kind of wrote, and they just didn't stop writing. It didn't matter if the sentence made sense or if whatever it was, they just kept on going. So I decided I was going to try and do that and put it in a video. It was just an experiment. I just wrote down exactly what I was thinking at the moment. And some of the stuff I didn't write down, I just filled in as I was recording the video and just talking it out. So It was a very interesting process. Like I said, the art was a little bit darker than normal, so I wanted something a little bit weird to go with it, and I decided to do this. Now I do stumble over a couple of words. You can tell I was reading the majority of it, and it was just something I don't usually read scripts when I do videos. So you'll see when I stumble across things in that video, it's because I was reading, and you never get the actual kind of the presentation that you have when you're just talking to someone as you do when you're reading. You can tell right away. And these first couple videos are going to be like that, unfortunately. Now, some of the ideas in here, when I went back and looked at what I wrote down and what I was saying, I think it came from, I had a fear when I was younger. I was a very insecure kid. I was the kid that got dropped off at like Head Start daycare thing, and I screamed until my mother came to get me. I would sit in the corner by myself. I did not want to associate with anybody, and I was just very unsecure. Were they going to come back for me? I don't know exactly where that came from. There's plenty of theories, I'm sure. Don't Freud me on this one. But it could be, I mean, I was 4 years old when my parents split up, and maybe that just made me feel like nothing was secure at the time. I was a kid, so I had no idea. And maybe that feeling stuck with me as I was growing up. And I remember several times I'd just be in a store, or I'd be, it could be the grocery store. I mean, not a place where it's very dangerous necessarily. And I'm holding on to the cart or whatever. And my mother turns around for a second, and the first thing that enters my mind is, what if someone grabs me? And those are really the thoughts I had in my head. Or I would be somewhere and I would lose sight of one of my parents, whichever one had me at the time, and I'd lose sight of them and wonder, is that it? Am I lost? Am I done? Am I just on my own now? And as a little kid, sometimes you have those kinds of thoughts. You don't realize, yeah, they're probably watching me. I just don't know where they are. But they're looking at me. And one of those times was at a carnival, a fair that was going on. And I remember that because I was with my father, and I was with my cousin and my uncle and aunt, and I was just kind of doing whatever. And they were talking, and I just was doing something, and I think they started to walk away. They knew where I was. They were looking at me. But they started to walk, like move towards the side, I guess to get out of the people's way, because there's a bunch of people coming. And I was just standing in front of the thing, looking if I was going to play the game or not or whatever. And they were watching me. When I turned, they weren't where I thought they were. And I had that moment of panic. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm in a very large area with a lot of people, and I can't find my parents. My father's gone. Where is he? He was watching me. He was just over there. I just didn't know where he was. Not very far from me, just I didn't know. He wasn't where I just looked. And I remember that. It sticks in my head. I can remember that moment like it happened yesterday. It was that big of a fear for me. So I think maybe that's where some of this story came from. I don't know where it's going to go from here. I know the first 3 episodes are already recorded, but I'm starting to, I want to kind of focus this down a little bit into a story that has a little bit more direction, but still wanders as much as this one did. So the next 3 have already been recorded. They're older. They're from the other channel. I'm just moving them over, and I'm explaining to you a little bit about the background and story behind them. But I think I want to try and focus the story a little bit and make it live in its own kind of world. And just continue, just like I'm going, random as I am, but sharing a little bit more with you as I go. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Everyone has that one place from their childhood that was scary to walk past, at least at night. You really didn't want to. Your friends had stories about those places, but you didn't believe them. At least, you didn't want to believe them. But maybe in the back of your mind, you really did. Let's find out if it's still there. Hello, friend. You found me once again? Where will we go today? You know, people always say let's start at the beginning, but you can't really start there. By the time there's a story to tell, you're past the beginning. So let's start in the middle, where you'll be miles ahead of all those beginners. There are too many things to talk about here, even to name a few. But the one thing I have for you today is sure to excite the senses and invigorate the mind. As I walked to my car, alone but not scared, I stumbled on a stone, sticking up out of the walk. What a strange stone, I thought to myself. I knocked it loose and stared at its swirls of colors. They reminded me of a fish I once saw while I was in a canoe in the low-lying country. At first it startled me as it swam past with a large fin that popped up out of the water and caught the moonlight in such a way as to take my breath away. I held as still as I could, trying my hardest not to shake the boat. Then out of nowhere there was a sense of dread as the sky filled with clouds and the first streak of light flashed from one cloud to another with barely a whisper. I could tell I was there, at the beginning. At the start, on the ground level of something I couldn't quite wrap my head around. As everything went silent, I could only hear my breathing and the wind. The wind seemed to scream by as it flew from place to place, came to rest beside an old house up on a hill with a single light in the window. A single light? I pondered. Was there only one person in the house? Or perhaps everyone was just in a single room. Or maybe no one was home, and they forgot to turn it off. Either way, my arms were heavy, so I had to put down the bag I was holding, which was full of wonderful things I had collected on my walk beside the rocky hill next to the house. Twigs that looked like they had faces, plants so colorful that would soon turn brown and gray after they were plucked from their home without a place to return. Was I guilty? Did I pick those, or was it you? You've been here with me this whole time, through this whole twisted sense of a tale. Are you guilty? Did you remove the color from the ground? Or was it someone else? Is there someone else here with us? No, don't worry. I don't think anyone else is here with us. No need to look around or sit quiet and still. It's just me in your head causing this chill. Wrapped in a blanket on my favorite chair, peering through the dark window from the front porch, as the light flickered and the glasses jingled in the cupboard, as if there were an earthquake just strong enough to rock me as I swayed back and forth. I picked up the bag and headed around back. Maybe there's a sign or a clue as to who owns this lonely home up on this hill. The shuffle in the leaves breaks my focus as I head down the small slope to the back. An animal, I'm sure, but what if it wasn't? The slope is wet and muddy as I slip further and further down towards the trees. As I try to catch myself from stumbling, the stars in the sky catch my attention. They're bright tonight. Not even the canopy of the forest can blot them out. The night is crisp and new. A feeling of hope overcomes me as I look toward the path in front of me, wondering, what is this all about? Why am I here? What am I looking for? A purpose? A place? An answer? Will you come with me as we wander through the world, leaving treats and traps, ups and downs, goods and bads? Do you wonder what's out there in the night? After all the birds have stopped singing and after all the bees have stopped buzzing, when the wind starts howling and the mist starts rising, when the moon glows bright and the trees seem to come alive. It's a world I've often dreamed of, but not one I've ever dared explore. After all, no one can wander alone, not on this path. This is the twisted sense of a tale where a simple ponder can lead you to the house on the hill with a single light that has now gone out. Who turned out the light? Do you want to go find out? Until next time, my friend, I'll be waiting right here. Welcome to the after party for episode 2. When I was younger, my family didn't have a lot of money. We were pretty poor. Matter of fact, our cheese came in a box and our milk came in a box that you had to mix with water. That's not that everybody wasn't trying to do the best they could, but we didn't have a lot of money. So me and my friends in the neighborhood, we had to do some things to entertain ourselves, and we did some things. So the community was kind of set off to the side. It was surrounded by woods. It was a condo area. So there was blocks of buildings, and there were so many buildings around it. And one of the ones that we were in were kind of towards the front of the whole complex. But there was surrounding woods. And there were 3 parks. And I call them 3 parks, but we were pretty creative with the names. Like we would call one Park 1 and the other one Park 2 and Park 3. Don't worry, it's not important. The thing is, they didn't have a lot. Park 1 was just a grass field. Now, luckily for us, there were some people in the neighborhood, and they said, hey, let's give these people something to do, these kids something to do. They created a little baseball field for us. There wasn't any, like, big, cages for the ball, nothing like that. There was just, they dug up some of the grass, they made it dirt, they tamped it down so it was pretty sturdy. And then we had, and I think they painted the lines. So we had a little baseball field. All of my friends used to get together. We used to go play at the baseball field. That was Park 1. It was right by the first entrance to the development. Park 2 was the park. That had and it wasn't very nice, but there were some dilapidated swings there and a slide, the metal ones that burned your skin in the summer as you went down them. I had a sandbox. I had a couple things to climb on. It wasn't bad. It was a decent park. And everyone would keep that park very clean. That's where all the kids would go to. There was a lot of buildings around, so there was a lot of adults there if we needed them for any reason. And everybody pretty much were in contact with each other. Not everyone knew everyone, but everyone was pretty friendly in that particular area anyway. Then there was Park 3, and not too many people knew about that one. It was tucked way off the beaten path towards the back of the community where no one really went. You actually had to you couldn't get there any other way by taking like a sidewalk off of one of the buildings, and then you would have to go even further back to a part of the development no one really went to. People didn't really even live back there. It was just this park area. Everything was broken. There was glass everywhere. There was garbage everywhere. It was not a good place to be. There were some druggies back there, and they'd go to that park. That's where they went. You'd find needles there. It was a dirty place, and some of the adults knew about it, and they would go clean things up once in a while. But for the most part, everybody stayed away from there. And as a kid, none of the kids were allowed to go there for obvious reasons. But you did hear what I said, right? There wasn't much to do around there. So every once in a while, we would all get together in a big group and muster the courage to, pack our bags with weird little things, like we were going on some adventure. A flashlight and a sandwich and maybe a couple box drinks, bag of M&Ms, and we'd trek out to the 3rd park and scope it out from the woods to see if anybody was there. And if anybody wasn't, we'd go there and see what's going on. And did anybody leave anything there? Sometimes jewelry was left there, wallets were left there. One time we found a dirty, rusty dart. And a friend of mine thought, you were kids, right? You're kids, you find a dart, and you're going to pick it up and you're going to throw it at the nearest wooden, whatever, a tree, or whatever. Well, there was this beam where this swing used to be, and it wasn't there anymore, of course. Nothing was really there. There was just frames of things. And there was this big, railroad tie beam, and we were throwing at the thing, and I was like, oh no, it's getting late, I got to get out of here. And like a moron, after I threw it in there, I started to go back because that was the way out. So I went around the back of it. Well, my friend had already pulled it out, and he was going to throw it and just toss that dart. And as I went behind it, it went right in my hand, right there, right in between the joint of my hand right there. This big, long, rusty dart. I ran home. My mother took me to the hospital to get a tetanus shot, and they cleaned it out and all that kind of stuff. That sucked. It wasn't even the reason I'm telling this story. We're getting to that part. So the story goes And of course, we're kids, so we hear lots of stories and we believe certain things. And we heard that the reason that that park was destroyed and no one would go there, and why there was so many bad things that happened there, is because it was cursed by the ghosts of the people. In the back of those woods, there was supposedly a burned down mental institution, and those people's ghosts were haunting that area. So guess what we decided to go find? Now, I remember thinking to myself, this is probably a bad idea, because we have no idea what we're going to find back there. And I was right. It was a bad idea. We had no idea what we were going to find back there. But you know, you're talking the kids in the 80s were they're coming off like the Goonies era. We're like, yeah, we're going to do some stuff and find some secret thing and we're going to get rich and all this other stuff. Or at least investigate this place and that no one else will go. But us brave kids will go there and we'll figure it all out. Now, we did the thing. We packed our bags and we waited till it was like the brightest point in the day. It was like noon. The sun was straight up in the air. Everything was fine. We were good. It was not a cloudy day. No rain in sight. We each grabbed a big stick and we kind of rubbed it on the cement and made a sharp point on it. And we went into the woods looking for this mental institution that was burned down, supposedly. Now, we had no idea where it was. But one of the kids had an older brother, and he knew where it was because he used to go there with his older friends in the back to party or whatever. I don't think they actually did that. I think that was a complete lie. But he said, no, I know how to get there. It's marked. Don't worry, it's marked. I didn't see any marks. The whole way there, I didn't see any marks anywhere. But he said, no, these are the marks. Just follow. I know where I'm going. Just follow me. We'll get there. And like a stupid kid, that's exactly what all of us did. Now, on the way going here, this friend of mine decided to tell me that his older brother, they used to go back here all the time, but they stopped because after going back here, they started having nightmares and they just couldn't go there anymore. There was something wrong with that place. Now, eventually, we were walking around. I had no idea where we were. You couldn't see the park anymore. So we were deep in the woods. And when I looked at, just recently, I looked at that place on Google Maps. And now there's another development way past it. But there's still a huge amount of woods for a kid to walk through. You'd still walk there forever and not see anything. So we got back there. I found what I thought was a burned down mental institution. And thinking back about how big it was like a little, it could have been even worse. It could have been more scary than that. And what it was like a cinder block foundation. Most of the houses where I was on Long Island, they were dug out because it's just sand. So most of it is just dirt, sand. It's easy to excavate the land there. So they dig out, they do the full basement thing. And it looked like the full basement with cinder blocks came up a couple of feet out of the ground. But everything else had collapsed in, like the roof collapsed in, the walls were pushed in, all that kind of stuff. The thing that was weird, though, is that it seemed much deeper than any basement that I've ever seen. It didn't just, like, go down one floor. It looked like it went down maybe a floor and a half or maybe 2 floors. So it was 2 stories down, but there was no actual floors. It was like 2 stories in or like 1.5 in. Way down in there, everything was covered in moss, everything was wet, and it was pretty creepy. Now, it smelled really bad. I remember that. I remember saying, it smells terrible down there. Now, for all I know, it could have been one of those druggies who wandered off into the woods and fell down in the hole. Who knows? I have no idea. But what I'm saying is, it stunk. I have no idea what was in there. But the weirdest thing to me was, there's no access to any road anywhere. Why would someone build that building right there with no road access anywhere? And like I said, up until recently, there was no development behind there. So it was just woods for a couple miles. What were they doing in there? Why did they build that? What were they doing? And it didn't just pop up overnight. And I remember looking like is there a way for a truck to get back here, for someone to like drive up to the facility? No. There are thick trees everywhere in all directions around it. You can't even get a car up any road or anything. Not that there was one. You couldn't even drive through the woods in any direction. You couldn't see the road, but you definitely couldn't get there by driving. And of course, as kids do, someone said, "Oh, look, I see something down there. We gotta get out of here." And everybody split. Everybody ran in every different direction. I don't think there was anything down there. I don't think anybody saw anything. Who knows? It could have. Maybe someone was down. I don't know. I didn't see anybody. But I know I was scared enough to run, turn around, and run. Now, as I started to run away, I had that fear in me from the other episode where I was going to be alone. So I quickly realized we're all going in different directions, and I yelled. I was like, "Wait a minute. Let's all go this direction. This is the direction we came from, the corner of this house. Let's go this way." And I grabbed the kid that said, "Oh, I know where everything is. I know exactly where to go." And I said, "Okay, get us out of here." And I don't know if we went in a straight line. We eventually got out to the park. We were a different part of the park. We had wandered a little bit. Not too bad. That was really stupid. We were dumb. We could have been lost in the woods for a very long time. It was a dumb idea, but we did it anyway. We eventually got back to the park, and I remember the story just grew within our group. At first it was a burned down mental hospital, then it was like some cult that was back there, and they used to take kids from the park, and that's why they closed down the park. It went crazy with these stories. That's what kids do. Then it turned into like there was these weird experiments being done back there. So some of the people from the community went back there and collapsed the house in on the guy. And it was some weird stuff. Now, I never went back there. But to this day, I remember it very vividly. And I kind of changed the scenario and the setting. But that is now the house on the hill. I hope you enjoyed the story. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Did you ever wonder how you form the ideas in your head? Where do they come from? Do they bubble up from your past? Is it something that you're focused on now, or is it something a little bit different? Let's talk about that. There was a winding path leading from the house on the hill. As I passed by, there was a whistle not unlike the toy I had when I was 10. Walking home from school, passing by the candy store, which had all sorts of goodies looking to lure the neighborhood children in with their nickel candy bins. The first thing I noticed was Charleston Chew. They had all the flavors. I would take them and freeze them in the freezer at my grandmother's house. A nice split-level home with an apartment on the lower level. My mother and I stayed there when I was 4 years old. Not long, and then we were on our way past a field where I would gather the neighborhood children and play baseball. There was this one day in the field where the strangest storm I've ever seen snuck up on us, and it was raining on one side of the field but not the other, and then it suddenly turned and reversed course, much like the winds of a twister, which go wherever they may in line or a swirl or a hop, skip, and a jump, like children playing in a schoolyard might. The school along the way home was like that, but not like the one across the street, which was cold and damp and abandoned long ago when they decided to grow and expand like an alien pod as you feed it more and more and more from people in the surrounding area. One day it became so large you could not contain it any longer, and it falls on the floor like a piece of food waiting for the dog to come around and lick it up, the whole time just making the spot more and more wet like the floor of the shower after you've spent time cleaning it. But don't worry, it's easy to dry off with the right kind of towel, not made of paper or sand like the beach we went to the one day while days were still short and the wind was calm. The sun just coming up over the water like a flame, bouncing and dancing on the wick of a candle, which stood in the window waiting for everyone to come home. Would they come home today? Maybe tomorrow. That is a sad story we will not explore today, as the time passes a little slower with each breath you take as the sun starts to set. There may be a little bit more to this story after all. As we read on, we see the heroes of the story emerge victorious and triumphant, galloping away without ever sharing what they have learned and misunderstood about the narrative we have been fed by the writer of the story they never finished. These are the times we live and must move forward without the satisfaction of jumping into a pile of leaves or scattering the seeds of a dandelion, but don't worry about such things. You're safe. warm and secure in your home without a care in the world as you drink your hot chocolate and get a little whipped cream on your nose and chuckle to yourself, wondering where the time has gone since you last opened the cupboard and found nothing but a can of beans for your next meal. Was there a way to explore this further, you thought to yourself, or was this the end of a delightful little tale where you once were but now are not, and you think to yourself in a very deep but warm and caring voice, what a wonderful world. The place where we wake and explore, we laugh and we cry, and we meet such interesting people by the side of the road of life that we begin to question everything within our thoughts and tendencies which our mind were formed into thinking before we have the experience we are now thinking of. What a funny thought. To experience the wave of ideas we experienced through the experience we had to form the thought we were having. It's fun to think about, and we do, but only for a moment, and then we move on with our lives from the place where we are to the place we will go and become the people we will become. The people who will drive the cars and dig the earth and write the stories which we then read to escape driving the cars and digging the earth and writing the stories. There's a way about this world that we can't quite put our finger on, like a key or a piano. The first time you try, there's a note. It's a sour note, but a pleasing one. Until you add more, you don't really know if the first one was even good, but you expect everything to follow along the same path, which was soothing, but could be the wrong direction, which is where the path has led me along this twisted sense tale. But as I make my way back, I am caught by surprise that the path I was just traveling on had stopped. Thank you for joining me again for the after party for episode 3. This one's a little strange too. So this episode was basically a thought experiment about thought. You know, if you're really honest with yourself, sometimes the thoughts in your head, how you got to that thing that you were about to say to someone else, you follow a very winding, twisting road. At least I do all the time. It's kind of a running joke I have with my wife. She'll ask me something, and she did at one point say, I said something very weird, very out of the norm, and she said, how did you get there? And I was like, well, I saw the commercial on television, and it said this, and then that made me think of this when I did this, which also made me think of that. And then I got around to thinking about that and went around that and said, hey, wait a minute, what if this was different? And we did that, and it reminded me of that time from back then, and so I just said something about that. We now agree. She no longer asks me how I come up with my thoughts. So every once in a while I say, oh, you want me to tell you where I came up with that? And she just looks at me, and I know exactly what she's thinking. Now in the episode, the story about the storm in the field, that was true. If you remember, I was telling you about Park 1, which was the baseball field that I grew up in and had a little baseball field. Now, I say grew up. I was between the ages of like 6 and 9. It was just a part of my childhood. It wasn't a drastic amount of time. Or maybe an extra year. Maybe it was either 3 or 4 years of my childhood, but I remember them very fondly. I actually really enjoyed that period of my life. So we're out in field 1, in Park 1, playing baseball in the field, and all of a sudden, in the outfield, everybody starts freaking out. They're throwing things away, their mitts and everything, they're running in, and what's happening? And we see this storm come out of the woods. There's the strangest thing. And it's coming towards us, and we actually see the line of where the rain is. And so we're just like all frozen. We're like, wait a minute, are we seeing what we're supposed to be, what we think we're seeing? Is this what we're supposed to be seeing? What's happening here? So in no time, we were all soaking. We were far from home. I mean, Park 1 was at the front of the development. Most of the people lived well in the development. I was towards the front, but still far enough away I was going to get soaked. So as a kid, you don't really care that much, but we were like, okay, well, this is great. Let's just all go home. Then it started raining where we were on the infield. I was batting at the time, so we're on the batting side, and it starts raining over by us, and the outfield clears up, so everybody runs to that side. And then it starts raining in both places at the same time, and we're like, well, screw it. We got to get out of here, and we start running towards the exit. And then it stops in the field and starts raining over by all the cars by the exit. So we're stopped there. Now I say cars, I mean from people who live in those buildings over there. We didn't have cars, obviously. We were kids. So we're like, oh no, okay, we'll just stay here. It was just the strangest experience, but it's a true story. Now the school reference was strange because I was thinking about that storm, so I was thinking about when I was younger. And it's both it's a little bit true, a little bit false. I didn't walk past any schools or see any kids, whatever. But the part about how the school was kind of being overtaken, that was true. So in my area where I was, there were like 3 or 4 different elementary schools that all pooled into a middle school. So you had grade K through 5 and all these little schools, these 3 or 4 schools laying around. They would all come together in another building for grades 6 and 7. And then you would go to another building for 8 and 9. And that was the junior high. And then you would go to another building for high school that was 10th, 11th, and 12th. Now, just to give you an idea, there were roughly about 1,000 kids per grade in each of those places. So that's why they split up all the elementary schools. And then once you went into a big school together where they all kind of converged into one area, there was a lot of kids. So they only had 2 grades per every school after that. And they were big schools, but now you have 2,000 kids that are in 6th and 7th grade. You have 2,000 kids in 8th and 9th grade. You have 3,000 kids that are in 10th, 11th, and 12th. So it was a huge school. There was a lot of people there. And that's kind of, I guess, where that story came from. I don't know. It just kind of popped into my head. I was thinking about the schools when I was thinking about that time in my life. The last thing I just want to bring up is the phrase, "What a Wonderful World," which is, of course, from the wonderful, one of my favorite voices in all of music, Louis Armstrong. Absolutely love the man's voice. Nothing like it. I wish that voice was around today to keep singing, because it's just a beautiful, beautiful voice. For whatever reason, it holds a very special place in my heart, that particular song. So it just kind of came out while I was spewing this nonsense all over the place. Thank you for tuning in to another episode and hearing my ridiculous explanations for these ridiculous stories. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Well, hope all of you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed it. I'll be doing these periodically. I'm not going to do them continuously. It's not going to be an every week kind of thing. But just when the mood hits me, I'm going to go ahead and record some. I think I mentioned this before, I have several paintings already done. So it's just a matter of when I feel like recording a story, that's what I'll do. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's something that takes off. The other one did not do very well. The other podcast series that I had, nobody really wanted to watch it. Nobody really cared. And that's fine. Not everybody has to like everything. That's just how it is sometimes. But I enjoy this one, so I hope you do. And I'm going to continue to do these even if they don't post very well, even if they don't get a lot of views, because I enjoy them. It's something that I enjoy, so I'm going to do that anyway. So hopefully you do as well. And if you don't enjoy these videos, you can take it up with these people popping up on the screen right here. Really, I have no control over this channel. It's all them. They just tell me exactly what to do. I'm just reading their script. So you got to take it up with them. So thumb up the video if you enjoyed this series, or you think you're going to enjoy this series and you're going to continue to watch it. And you can thumb up the video if you're not going to enjoy the videos and you're not going to watch them. Just have some pity on me. I'm just trying to get by over here, so you take that pity on me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you would like to join our community, go to illustrationsbypete.com. You can come in, you can put your own artwork on the site and promote it. You can find some inspiration in the free reference photos. You can just use them however you want in your artwork. You do not need to credit me. Or you can come into the forums and talk to some people and maybe give some advice and maybe find a little bit of information that helps you. So come check us out. All right, that's about it for me. I'm going to go. I'll see you in the next one.